Hi, teachers. Another quick video from me. I'm going to try and keep this really brief. Thank you. Thank you for a great 2 days of learning together last week. I know it was a whirlwind. I know that there was a lot of information and a lot of things to tackle. And as I was reflecting on our time together, I tried to think about what were the entry points, meaning what were some of the broad categories that we focused on, and then where might people find themselves moving towards next steps, knowing we can't do it all at once. So with that said, I'm going to share my screen and go ahead and give you four, what I found to be four entry points from our time together, or four different categories of things to think about. The first one is just thinking about student overall engagement, student participation. And know that when I say engagement, I'm not just saying, showing up and being there, but really trying to suck kids in, really trying to get kids intellectually engaged and stimulated in this world where either they're distanced in person or some of them are distanced on the screen. And so through that, the first category, thinking student engagement and participation, some of you named out things like using students' names. You heard me doing that a lot in our remote teaching. And I think it's something that we can all think about, especially in our in-person teaching. I'll be honest, I'm quite better, or quite frankly, better at it remotely because I can see their names, but in person, something I could think about too. Diane and I were even talking about how she might focus more on the kids who are in person, because sometimes it feels like the kids who are online, that's overwhelming to focus on both. So maybe you say to yourself, a couple days a week, without naming it to the kids, I'm going to focus more on sucking in the students who are on the screen versus on other days, the kids who are in person. Obviously, we always want both. I also said to Diane, maybe it's the first 20 minutes, the second 20 minutes, or whatever it is. But using kids' names is something we focused on, and you saw me modeling. Another thing I hope you saw me model, especially on day 2, based on some of the questions that came up on day 1, was really the screen time and kids showing their face, if you will. I know one of the issues has been that kids who are learning remotely will come on, they'll show their screen, they'll participate, and then they check out. So finding different ways to say, hey, Megan, show me that you're there. Alex, I want to see what working is looking like for you now. Even having kids come back to the share and kind of that on-screen, off-screen, on-screen, off-screen is one way that you can keep kids engaged throughout the entirety of the workshop period. I also think the more we can encourage student talk and peer accountability, the better. We talked a lot about making their work visible to each other, having accountability groups, having them share with each other, having them share their screen, doing digital gallery walks, etc. I'm sure Candace will help you think through some more ideas there. And then last but not least, student ownership. This was something in the day 2 lab sites, I know Skip named out as something that was an observation, and it's something I think we all noticed, is that students are waiting for teachers to do a lot of the learning for them, a lot of the teaching for them, a lot of the content delivery for them, and really trying to hand over some of that ownership to kids and having high expectations that, 5th and 6th graders in Highland Park can guide themselves through a document that teaches a small group on the page, and holding them accountable for that. I think we all saw instances where 5 minutes in, kids are like, I'm not sure what I'm supposed to be doing. And it was right there in front of them on the screen. So something to think about. So this might be an access point for some of us. Some of us might just be thinking, how do I get more student engagement and intellectual participation? The second thing I thought about as an entry point is just overall differentiation and access. And across the 2 days, we talked about how we can be using the learning progressions more to help us give different access points. One of my former colleagues, Kate Roberts, at the start of distance learning, talked about the importance of using those progressions for students to see that there's always a next step. Using all the tools that we give kids, you saw me model that on Monday. We talked about it last year, or Thursday, you heard us talk about it last year, but really trying to get back to that concept of the silent teachers that students are using. 2 more things. I think another entry point is really trying to embrace some small group instruction. If we feel like we've been overly focused on whole group instruction, reminding ourselves that that small group instruction is important, not just so that we can give access, but it also promotes student and peer accountability and talk. And I think that's a really key piece. A couple things that I think will help you with that are, one, having a predictable plan. That document that I shared with all of you, you can just copy and paste that one, but students start to get used to the plan that they will see. And so even if the small group is being led by the teacher, which I want it to be, we can also have it be led by a document or a student. It could be like a self-guided small group in terms of the content that kids are getting, so that I can focus my efforts more on coaching kids. And then another thing that came up, I know with Beth when we talked one day at lunch, was thinking about a cycle. So maybe I don't start new small groups every single day, but maybe I just make a plan. And I say for a couple weeks, the groups are going to stay the same. And so I feel like I can kind of focus on a plan and the group can kind of build their own accountability and practice with each other over time. Last but not least, when I think about different access points, and again, you don't have to do this all. Some of us might be like, I'm just here. I'm going to start using kids' names more, but hopefully we can refer back to this video over time. Remembering that our most important job as a teacher is to be a coach. And this is something that I think we let go of often and we forget about. We see our role as being more about delivering content. And yes, that's one side of our job as a teacher, but to truly move kids forward in the way in which we want to move them forward, especially in the 5th and 6th grade level, is we want them to have some ownership. And that could be through guiding themselves through a plan of small groups so that as the teacher, I can focus my efforts on the coaching, on the naming what they're already doing and a next step. So as I walked away from our time together, I thought student engagement and participation is one category. Giving access and differentiating using tools and silent teachers is another category. Creating these small groups that feel predictable and kind of get us back to some of that routine is another category. And a final category is reminding ourselves of our job as coach and thinking about how we might embrace that role remotely. Last but not least, I do want to go back to just this continuum that we talked about. And I think Skip and Candace said they had already ordered this book. I think Candace already has it. But I started to actually think after our time together that I wonder if even having kids look at this continuum could be helpful, even as a reflection at the end of the week or a pre-Thanksgiving reflection or an end of first semester reflection, to have kids name out where are they on this progression. And it's not always about moving from here to here. But if I'm a student who right now is avoiding or withdrawing, what are some strategies I can use to start participating? What are some strategies I can use to start investing? And I think this might lead to a really nice whole class conversation with students in your classroom. Something I was thinking about, something that I think could be helpful. At the end of the day, anything that you're doing is a step in the right direction and good for kids and well worth it. I hope that our 2 days together fed all of you in all the best ways. I'm sure it left you feeling overwhelmed and like your heads were full of 1,000 things, but hopefully you can go back to this video. Hopefully we can go back to these 4 categories and just constantly remind ourselves of our entry point. Maybe today it's just starting to use kids' names, or maybe you're like, I think I can take those small group plans and start making some copies of them. Or you know what? I've got the small groups up and running. They're in group A and B. I'm going to leave them be, and I'm just going to pop in and out and do some coaching. You do you. You pick the access point that works for where you're at and where your students are at. It does not have to be the same across the board. I know Candace and Skip and Bree and the rest of the team and each other are there to help and support you along the way. So thank you again. Please, you guys feel free to reach out to me if I can help with anything, if you need copies of anything, if I promised anything that I didn't deliver. And I look forward to being in touch and working together again in the near future. I hope that you guys are going to be able to check out next week and kind of enjoy some family time. I am thankful for you, and I'm sure your students are also incredibly thankful for you, whether they know it or not. Thanks, guys. Have a great week.